I'd like to read the prayer list. Prayers for happy rebirth, all those killed by natural and man-made disasters. All the Tibetans have been killed or have taken their own lives in the struggle for religious freedom. Robin Bongiorno, Sally Comer, James Foley, Max Halperin, Anthony Masha, Larry Middleton, Shyamali Mitra, Stephen Sotloff, Miss Kitty the cat, Scooter the dog. Job search, Roseanne Barona, John Carroll, Lee Clark, Joey Gooch, Joe Griffiths, Jim Kay, Michelle Matich, Robert Palermo, Mark Christop, Alex Schwartz, Greg Weaver, Sandy Wimbish. Prayers for health and well-being. Kabje Lamazo Rinpoche, Venerable Margaret McAndrew, Venerable Cherokee Lamo, Venerable Losan Sering, all those harmed by natural and man-made disasters. For the Tibetan people and for the Chinese authorities, may the nonviolent path lead to full reconciliation and religious freedom. Roger and Barb Alexander, Russell Allen, Ahmed Alcacer, Mrs. Askew, Lisa Baranski, Jim Barnes, Luz Barona, Narcissus Barona Sr., Roseanne Barona, Kitty Burke, John Carroll, Julie Castello, Jack Delasso, Diana Dietzler, Chu Sano and her children, Dimitri Diamandopoulos, Suzanne Diamandopoulos, Andrew Flaherty, Jimmy Gooch and family, Mildred Gooch, Robert Gruber, Tracy Haas Thompson, Annie Hassel, Kathy Hayashi, Francis Hayashi, Travis Henley, Leslie and Joan Inman, Nick Jablins, Kenny Jackson Buddy, Helen Kasanoff, Nina Kowalski, Karina Lilick and family, Mary Lodek, Danny Love, Tom Lynch, R.M., Tom McGinnity, Scotty McLean, Sarah Miller, Colleen Mitchell, Jose Moreno, Rivera Nielsen, Reba Gail Saunders, family of Shyamali Mitra, Evan Myrtland family, William Oliver, Jay Pandya, Anna Papard, and many cousins throughout the Ukraine, Mark Christop, Ken Roman, Eileen Rubin and family, Ariana Scott, Rosemary C. Sarai, Basil Shute, Lori and Freddie Todd, Lobsan Tupton, Bob Utzman, Fran Van Kirk, Dion Washington, Jessica Whitmore, Shay Wokowicki, Bodie the cat, Carmen the dog, Georgia and Cadro the pigs, Grady the dog. He's here. So when Venerable George arrives through this door, if you've never been here before, if you please stand. And then he'll start doing prostrations, and I guess we will do it with him or after him. Afterwards, okay. After he sits on the throne, then we can start prostrating. If you feel very uncomfortable doing so, you can just remain standing. That's perfectly fine. And then we'll say some prayers in this white prayer book. And if you're sitting on the pew, it's way at the end of the pew near that aisle over there. And on the first beige sheet and the bottom of the first pink sheet. This is, as you heard Donna's announcement, this is Venerable George's last Sunday teaching for this particular visit. Okay. Yeah, that sounds bad. Let's see. Anything else? Oh, if you have cell phones, would you please turn them off and or put them on mute? And I think that's about it, isn't it? Okay. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so if you'll please turn to the first base sheet in the white prayer book. So chant Shakyamuni Buddha's mantra 3 times, and then the 4 measurables in English. Tayata mune mune mahamunaye soha. Tayata mune mune mahamunaye soha. Tayata mune mune mahamunaye soha. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. Now, if you please turn the page to the first pink sheet. In the bottom, there are 2 mantras. So let's chant Chenrezig's mantra 8 times, and right above that, Green Taro's mantra 7 times, and keeping in mind the people on our prayer list and those in our hearts and minds. Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Taritu Taritu Re Soha, 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 Om Taritu Taritu Re Soha.
No? Oh, there we go. Takes some time to warm up, I guess. So nice to see some new faces. I think, how many people are here for the first time? Couple? Okay, good. Anyone here who's never meditated before? Oh, okay. You all have done some meditation. So I thought at the beginning, we will do a couple minutes of quiet meditation to try to calm our minds, let go of the continuity of thoughts that you've been having before, and to set a good motivation for the talk this morning. So sit comfortably, as most of you, I think all of you are. Relax your body, relax your mind, and focus on the breathing. If I were to say, as I've mentioned in other times, listen, it's something passive. You don't have to make a sound to listen to. You just are aware. Just watch your breathing that way with your mind. You don't have to control the breathing. And add some discriminating awareness to the mix. That is to say, recognize when you're breathing in and when you're breathing out. And take that as a primary focus, an exclusive focus of your mind. to the exclusion of all other thoughts. Anything else comes to mind, just pull your mind back to watching the breathing. You may find it difficult or may not, depending on whether you're familiar with this very simple beginning meditation. But now bring your attention to your mind, your mental consciousness itself, that in which you're thinking, that in which you're observing, not your eyes, not your ears, nose, tongue, or body consciousness, but the mind that remembers, that plans, that's aware of what's happening now, making judgments about the present, and just watch the thoughts that are going through your mind without getting involved in them, like sitting at a cafe on a sunny morning, watching the pedestrians walk back and forth without getting up from your seat, getting involved with them. These pedestrian-like thoughts. Some of the thoughts might be visual images that come to your mind that have certain associations for you. Some of the thoughts may be verbal. Some of the thoughts may just be emotive states, sense of dissatisfaction or happiness, or maybe there's a simmering irritation from the traffic jam this morning, or whatever. Try to see around the thoughts the spaciousness of your mind. Moments when you're not engaged in any particular thought or image. Some quiet in the mind, and try to hold on to that. Focus on that and make it longer. underlying all the thoughts that course through our mind is the substratum of our consciousness, the nature of which is like a clear sky, like a clear, vast body of water, fluid, able to sustain objects within it. But when those objects are not present, very clear, lucid, illuminating. With this quiet, lucid mind, try to set a motivation for this morning's talk. Think, I'm going to listen to the teachings this morning as though it were advice, medicinal advice, so to speak, to make myself a better person. I'm going to listen to the teachings, weigh them in my mind. If I find them useful, see if I can apply them. If not, just let them go without judgment. Especially to be able to benefit other people so that I become less harmful and actually beneficial to all the beings that I encounter. And then bring your attention back to the present. Oh, someone said I would notice this, that when I opened my eyes again, there would be more people in the meditation room. It peered out of the clear light nature of my mind. So, any comments, any observations? How was your meditation? No one wanted to venture. How this gentleman in the striped shirt? How was your meditation? No, this one. He has more of a striped shirt than you have. How was your meditation? Peaceful. Did you actually? Could you concentrate, or was your mind bouncing around?
A little bouncy, but mostly concentrating.
Okay. Anyone have any experience they'd like to share? Or especially if you don't want to share, get it off your chest. No, I'm joking. Okay. No, good. This gentleman has.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Normally I think about kind of thoughts floating in, but you mentioned it may be kind of a feeling or some kind of a simmering something, and I kind of felt that when you mentioned it, I didn't really realize it was there.
Right. Good point. They're different. When we say thoughts, we may have an idea that thoughts mean some kind of like, I've got to pick up the coffee at the market or something like that, some verbal kind of thing. Thoughts can also take the form of images within our mind. You may, like when we have a daydream, we may imagine scenery or a person or some scenario. They can also be a state of simmering attachment or anger or dissatisfaction or so forth. So all of those can affect us, and so the emotive kind of conceptual thoughts, they can affect our subsequent mood. They can affect other things that come to mind because of that. It's affecting our consciousness. So sometimes just to let go, like to start fresh, that can be very useful. Good observation. Okay, so I wanted to mention today in the some of you may have been to some of the previous talks on Sunday since I've been here. We talked about one of the prayers we did in the morning called the Four Immeasurables. But this morning, I'd like to talk about a quintessential practice of Buddhism called taking refuge or going for refuge. How many people here would say you're actually Buddhist? Okay, not many people. Interesting. That's okay. Oh, you thought you should. Oh, are you Buddhist? How nice. I am too. So, what does it mean to be Buddhist? Or like, say, for instance, what does it mean to be a Lutheran or a Catholic or a Jew or a Muslim? Or I live in western part of the state, north of Asheville, and there's a lot of free will Baptist churches. Do you have around here free will? Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. FW it says on. And I asked one of the parishioners, what did it mean to be a free will Baptist? So I'm not sure he was an elder or that he knew that well, but he had a nice explanation. He said that in general, and correct me if I'm wrong, in general Baptists believe that once baptized or once saved, once baptized, you're saved. Once saved forever. That's what he said. But the free will Baptists believe that once saved, once baptized, you can fall from the state of being saved. And so therefore you had to watch your mind throughout your life. You had to be very careful about your behavior, your morality, your ethics, and so forth. Does it sound right to you? Those of you who are Baptist, maybe he had it wrong. Anyone here Baptist? No one's Baptist. Okay, so maybe. Anyway, the reason I mention that is because there is a defining characteristic of what it means to be a Buddhist. It doesn't mean that you have an identity card that says you're Buddhist. Sometimes I joke in Singapore, where I teach, sometimes the people on their birth certificate says they're Buddhist, and they have their identity card that says they're Buddhist, and so they just believe that they're a Buddhist as though it's a family, inheritance or whatever. What it means to be a Buddhist is to have from the depth of your heart, a confidence in what's called the triple gem or the three refuges. Have you heard of that before? Some of you? Interestingly enough, at this Buddhist institute, we don't say the refuge formula at the beginning. Maybe someday they will, very brief. Usually it goes something like this. I take refuge in the Buddha, or you can also say, I go for a refuge to the Buddha. I go for a refuge to the Dharma. I go for a refuge to the Sangha. And that's recited generally 3 times, repeated 3 times altogether. Do you know what the word, in English, what the word refuge means? Anyone that doesn't have an association with the word refuge? I don't mean refugee. Nowadays, I think we're all worried about refugees in the United States. Say, for instance, if you want to take the bus and it's raining, you may seek refuge under the bus. Do you have here bus stands? Or maybe it's not many because the weather is so nice here. Up north, they're more, you know what I'm talking about, the little kiosk or something that you can be protected from the weather. So a refuge from a Buddhist perspective is something that can protect you from suffering. When we take refuge in the triple gem, or meaning the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and I'll explain what those mean. What are we taking refuge from? Are we taking refuge from headaches or what? We're taking refuge from the inevitable kind of sufferings we experience throughout our continuity of lives. Because from a Buddhist perspective, this is not our one-time living. There was a commercial many years ago that I remember from TV for a beer they used to sell in the Midwest called Schlitz. Do they still sell Schlitz beer? Yep. Okay. Yeah, okay. I thought you were admitting that you were an aficionado. It's just that you know. So there was a commercial for Schlitz on TV, and there was an elderly gentleman on a yacht with many young lady friends, and a wealthy person on a yacht, and it said, "You only live life once, so you have to grab as much gusto as you can." I think that was one of the slogans of Schlitz. You have to grab, it has a lot of gusto. Well, just the idea that you only live life once. From a Buddhist perspective, we don't live life just once. We will have many, many lives, not necessarily as humans. We will come back as certainly as Christian, and many Christians believe, we may come back and experience something in the future that is like a hellish experience, very much like is explained in the Christian tradition. But that is not eternal from a Buddhist perspective. After that's finished, we may come back as an animal. In fact, from a Buddhist perspective, all of your pets, all of the animals you see, even the annoying ones like mosquitoes or cockroaches or spiders or whatever, have in the past been humans, have in the past been in hell, have in the past been other animals. And we are circling again and again through this cycle called cyclic existence in English, or samsara. And within all of those lives, there's many, many kinds of discomforts, many kinds of suffering. Some of them very gross. If we were to be born in hell, have you ever had a nightmare? Anyone here never had a nightmare? Most of us have something really uncomfortable in sleep. Can you imagine a nightmare that extended for eons? That's kind of like the experience of hell, you know, a nightmarish experience, frightful, suffering. So there are overt, obvious sufferings within cyclic existence, much more than we experience as humans. But we have a lot of sufferings as humans, things that we find uncomfortable, losing loved ones, maybe having some disease, some sickness, being impaired from our happiness, feeling unable to find what we want in life, friendship or love or job or reputation and so forth. And very obvious sufferings, as I mentioned, sickness and headaches and traffic jams and, you know, the whole gamut of things. Generally, we can use our minds, our intellect, to protect us from certain sufferings. You know, if it's sunny, you put on suntan oil, or you put on more clothing, or you go inside in an air-conditioned room to protect you. But to protect ourselves from the deeper kinds of suffering of life and the future lives, we need to have something which is capable of protecting us. A refuge. From a Buddhist perspective, the real refuge that can protect us is the understanding of reality. What is in Buddhism is called the Dharma. So the Dharma sometimes is represented as books. I don't have one right here, but so, you know, a textbook, you might say, this is a Dharma text. Tells about the teachings of the Buddha, like say maybe you could say something like the Buddhist Bible. Okay, and you might think, okay, that will protect me. I will put it on my head to protect me from suffering, or grasp it. This will carrying this will protect me from suffering. As superficial as that sounds, there is some protection, even thinking in that way. But the real protection that the Dharma provides, the teachings provide, is by listening or reading them, listening to them, reading them, thinking about them, and putting the teachings into practice. The advice, spiritual advice, you might say, putting that into practice. Like, say, for instance, recognizing the inevitability of change, of impermanence. Understanding impermanence is a source of refuge for us. The understanding of impermanence is an understanding of the Dharma that can protect us from suffering. Just recognizing this too will change when you're in an unbearable situation. Recognizing that whatever you're experiencing right now will not last eternally, but will begin to diminish. And just having that thought for an instant helps to protect you from suffering, from the mind exaggerating what you're experiencing. Does that make sense to you? That's just a simple example of how the Dharma can protect us. There are many facets of the Dharma. Say, for instance, developing a mind of loving kindness, respect for other people, a mind of compassion, empathy with others. That can protect us from suffering also, because as we go through life without empathy for others, without friendliness to others, we will experience from others a certain amount of distance, maybe even animosity sometimes. Oh, that neighbor, George, he never smiles. He doesn't care about me. Let's take his mail and put it in the trash, or something. So having an attitude of caring for others, just in a very superficial sense, protects you from suffering. It makes your own mind elevated, elevates your own experience of calm and happiness. It can protect you from suffering. There are various facets like this of the Dharma, more sophisticated and more subtle, that can protect us from all sufferings, meditative states in which you can overcome your own ego. You're grasping to your own self-identity. And thereby, through that methodology, that kind of meditation, you can overcome your anger, your attachment, your jealousy, your pride, and be in a state that's invincible to these kinds of disturbing states of mind. That's the real refuge that we seek. And when we, as Buddhists, that's the kind of refuge that we're ultimately going to depend upon. So that's of the so-called three refuges, or triple gem, three jewels also called. There was a Buddhist text that was written at the library in India some years ago, one of called the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives, and it had a misprint in it, several misprints. And one of the reviewers of the book was a friend of ours. He was reviewing it, and in his review, he said that this book talked about the three Jews of refuge. It's meant the three jewels, right? The three Jews of refuge. I don't know how they got by that. You think they would at least have the L in there or something like that. The three Jews of refuge. And then he pointed out, he said there's Alex Bersden and John Landau, but who's the third? There were the two famous Jewish translators at the time. So he was joking. So the three jewels of refuge, or three gems, the triple gem, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. The real refuge is the Dharma. That's what protects us from suffering. When we hear teachings, let's say we can all say that, also use the terminology in Christianity. We can talk about Christian Dharma, not just dogma, but the real heart advice that Christ gave that we can read and that changes our minds. You know, if you take refuge in that, that's perhaps real sense of being a Christian rather than just from the, you know, identity card or just claiming that you're a Christian. So if you have some teachings at your disposal that you have faith in, and you have experience that in putting them in practice protects you from suffering, you are a spiritual person. If you take refuge in the teachings given by the Buddha, called the Buddha Dharma, and you seek the support of the spiritual community called the Sangha. So Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha are these three refuges. The real refuge, as I said, is the Dharma. The founder, 2,500 years ago, 500 years before Christ, was an individual that eventually became called the Buddha. He was born as a prince named Siddhartha Gautama, and through his own practice and wisdom, from a Buddhist perspective, we would say from his experience in previous lives, following a spiritual path for a long, long time, he was able to explain to others and found the system that's called, nowadays called Buddhism. Okay, so if you're a Buddhist, the real defining characteristic of whether you're a Buddhist or not is if from the depth of your heart you take refuge, you take protection from the various sufferings of life in the Dharma, basically, but also the Buddha and the Sangha. The Sangha means the spiritual community. There's a little bit analogy sometimes given like this. The Dharma is like the medicine that can help us overcome some illness. The Buddha is like the physician who's prescribed the medicine, who's diagnosed us, all living beings, seen the basic problem that's common to all of us, prescribed the Dharma. Hopefully he has better handwriting than some of the physicians I've run across. Joking. Have you ever seen the handwriting of physicians when they write the prescription on a piece of paper? And the Sangha are like the nurses who help us, or the assistants who help us take the medicine or the therapy. Say the physical therapists or the nurses who remind us to take the medicine, how to take the medicine. That analogy was given by the Buddha. So if you take refuge from the depth of your heart in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, then you could call yourself a Buddhist. And as I said, of the three of those refuges, the main one is the Dharma. That's what you're really taking refuge in. Realization that can change your mind. Realization of what is true and what can be beneficial to change your mind. Generally, and I think some of the people that are members of the center may not know the actual process of how you take refuge. Taking refuge means having the two causes of refuge. It doesn't mean simply saying words, this refuge formula, with very pious look on your face and your hands together saying, I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha 3 times. That doesn't really constitute taking refuge. Nor does simply attending a ceremony. Let's say the presiding teacher at the center has an academic degree called Geshe. So his name is Gelek. So he's called Geshe Gelek. So if in the future you were to hear that Geshe Gelik is offering refuge ceremony, almost sounds like he's offering refuge. If you come, he will protect you. And there'll be a ritual that's performed, and actually you're meant to think in a particular way, which is the actual taking a refuge. But generally, you might think that attending that ceremony, you become a Buddhist, that you've now taken refuge. That's not really taking refuge. Really taking refuge is having within your mind stream the fundamental causes of refuge. One of the causes is an apprehension, a fear of suffering that you cannot control. Like if you have an illness, if you have cancer, or what's the big fear right now? Ebola, right? I think 3 people out of 300 million. How many people in America? 300 million? At least. So 3 out of 300 million have contracted Ebola, but we're really afraid about it. Maybe there's some cause for that. If you were to have a fear of Ebola, you would seek some kind of protection from that. You would seek around and try to find something that had the capability of protecting you from that. So in the same way, when we talk about not just the fear of Ebola or of headaches, the fear of headaches, or the fear of eventually dying, we recognize that we have very little influence about future suffering. Of course, we can get an education, we can work very hard, we can save our money, build our own little, enclave to protect us from suffering. But still then, even people who are very wealthy, who are very smart, still suffer, don't they? They have headaches, they have to endure traffic jams and power outages, and greater sufferings in life. Their loved ones, or they may not find love. Even if they have love, they may lose it. They eventually have to age. They'll find sickness. They'll have to die. And in the future, from a Buddhist perspective, there are many other sufferings that will have no ability, as we do as humans, to protect ourselves from. Being born as animals, being used for food, fear of being killed by others, eaten by other animals, used as slaves, cut up slowly in pieces, like you remember the ships that used to travel the ocean sometimes would have a tortoise or turtle. What would it be? Turtle on board? Do you know why? Because they could cut off some of the flesh continuously during the journey, and the turtle would still be alive, and they would use that to eat. Can you imagine that? It's dying in that way with great suffering. All of the kinds of sufferings that we might encounter this lifetime and in future lifetimes, having some recognition of that and some wisdom fear, not a kind of, fear that puts you unable to act. Have you ever seen a mouse that's been cornered by a kitty cat? What happens? Sometimes they freeze. Do you know what I'm talking about? You haven't seen, or you have? Do you think that mouse is experiencing a lot of pleasure at that time? It's obviously, as we sometimes say for instance, similar kind of example, if you were caught in a lie by your teacher in class, so it's like that fear, or your mom, you said you didn't take the cookies, but you've got, some crumbs on your cheek or something, like you're caught in the lie, the fear in your mind. That's not a wisdom fear. That's just an incapacitating fear. Here, the fear that's a cause of refuge is a wisdom. that sees the future and recognizes that we have, in our present state, we have no way to protect ourselves from that suffering, that inevitable suffering. Can we protect ourselves from aging, from death? There are certain people, often they're wealthy, who have arranged for their bodies to be, and I never pronounce this word right, cryogenically or cryogenically preserved. Do you know what that means? They get frozen. And very simple, that they get frozen in some kind of special way so the cells don't burst. But perhaps some of them have had just their head, their brain cryogenically preserved, frozen, with the anticipation that in the future medical science will be such that their whole personality could be revived, right? Whether that's possible or not, I don't know. I tend to think that from a Buddhist perspective, we have a certain amount of fortune, Buddhists would say a certain karmic imprint, to live a certain lifespan. And to expect to be just frozen and revived after 1,000 years or something, when supposedly medical science is able to revive you, maybe from a Buddhist perspective may not be possible. But at any rate, that may not be a perfect protection against death, from the fear of death. So one of the causes of refuge is fear of suffering, all of the different sufferings that we experience, and recognize in our own lifetime, I have no control over my mind. I get angry, I have attachment, addictions, even if I feel myself elevated from people that I might feel inferior, or they addicts, I don't have those problems. We do have our own kind of psychological problems. Maybe one of them is pride. If that's what you're feeling, those people have problems, but not me. I'm better. So fear of the various kinds of suffering is one of the causes. The second cause, and necessary cause, is a faith, or at least a hope, that the objects that you choose as refuge have the capacity to protect you from that suffering. Like if it's raining, it's pouring rain, and you're seeking refuge from the rain, you need to have hope that the place that you're seeking, there's something down the road. They say, oh, there's some refuge down the road. You have to have some hope, at least, in seeking that it will protect you from suffering. So that's the second cause. One is fear of the sufferings of cyclic existence. And the depth of your understanding of that will influence how strong, how authentic your taking of refuge is, and how real a Buddhist you are, let's say. The more you understand the depth of suffering, and by depth of suffering, I don't mean the intensity of suffering, but how suffering pervades all of our existence. There's an Indian word for suffering. Do any of you know what the Indian word for suffering is? Dukkha. Dukkha. There's an Indian word also for bliss, sukha. Dukkha and sukha form a nice pair. So the Buddha said that dukkha, or suffering, or you'd say unsatisfactoriness, dissatisfactory or unsatisfactory nature pervades everything, even a delicious cup of coffee. Not too bad. Is of an unsatisfactory nature, because although my mind might imagine it to be the source of some relief when I'm thirsty, or when I'm trying to wake up, got sand in my eyes, a good cup of Java sometimes hits the spot, right? But if you were to continuously drink coffee, and I mean continuously, you would recognize that it doesn't continuously bring you pleasure. At the beginning, it's helping to reduce one dissatisfaction, maybe sleepiness or thirst, while the ingestion of it is creating a new suffering. One suffering is going down, another suffering is going up. While the bigger suffering is going down, and the lesser suffering is still going up, we call that pleasure. But when we've drank a little a little too much coffee, and the suffering of the coffee becomes paramount, we start getting nervous, or our tummy's bloated and we have to go to the bathroom, and it no longer is. It's tea. Okay. So we're enjoying suffering together here, coffee and tea. So you have to have confidence in the object of refuge that can protect you from suffering. How do you develop that faith or confidence, or at least hope? Well, sometimes it's difficult. In this day and age, in our materialistic society, there is a great skepticism of religion. Do you sense that? I don't know, this particular group of people here today may not be representative of the Deep South, the Bible Belt. Maybe you are. I don't know. People as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, the people in the Bible Belt are more, claim to have more faith, let's say, in Christianity, and are skeptical of science and things like that. Is that a gross approximation, or would you say that's not correct? Is that more or less correct? What do you think back there? Yeah, you're right. Now, this lady in the wall, right? You who's turning her head to the you. Yeah, you. No, I'm this lady who doesn't want to. Right there. Yeah. What you were shaking your head, or I don't know if you were agreeing. Yes, you. And there you go. Yeah, no, I that's why I was asking for someone's help so there are various camps. There are camps of people in the United States now that are still clinging on to faith, but sometimes maybe some of them are a little irrational, discarding science completely. There are other people who claim to be scientific or not, and who claim to be atheists. You hear a lot about that. They're very popular in certain literature. You can read about people who are critical of all religions, as though anyone who would believe or have faith or confidence or hope that God or Buddha or Dharma can protect you, those people are deluded. You ever run across that sentiment? Maybe in our own mind we feel that sometimes too. The church saying this or that, and we give up, we have no faith. So faith and confidence may be a little bit difficult at this particular time to generate. But it's something that is, let's say, remember Saddam Hussein during the Great War? He called the war that America was about to engage in the mother of all wars. Do you remember that expression? No? So, okay. I'm not good. Thanks. The mother of all wars. Well, we could call faith the mother of all spiritual progress. Without some faith, without some hope, you're never going to enter into the practice of a spiritual tradition. So it may be a little bit difficult at this time, especially if you have some kind of doubt about other spiritual traditions of the past, the abuses in the church, the pedophilia, the ministers or the priests preying upon children, sexual abuse of parishioners, power abuse, the televangelists who were caught out in using all of the money that their church was receiving for their own good, or the Indian swamis with a fleet of Mercedes, Rolls Royces. You remember things like this? You may have little or you may have some rational foundation to be doubtful that faith has any foundation at all. So what you need to do is to experiment a little bit. It's the same thing with let's say a bathtub of, someone tells you they've they've drawn a nice bath for you. And do you immediately get into that bath? What do? You test it first, right? You put your pinky in, or see if it's too hot or too cold, or then you put your toe, and then you put your ankle in. Do you ever try this? Is it a little? Maybe it feels okay, but maybe it's hotter down below. You put in your leg slowly. So you can do the same thing with a spiritual tradition. Let's say with Buddhism. Try out the Dharma. That's the real refuge. Let's see, leave Buddha and Sangha of the Triple Gem off to the side for a moment. Just try out the medicine. Meditate, listen to the teachings, see if they actually bring about what they're purported to bring about, some protection from suffering, whether your mind feels elevated, whether you are perhaps more patient through thinking in this way, whether your mind becomes calmer through meditation, and you're able to sleep better at night. When you have that a little bit of experience, it's like having put your hand in the bathtub, or your toe, found it, okay, that's comfortable, that's soothing, then going a little bit further, then delve a little further into the teachings. And if you continue to find those teachings, the Dharma in this case, the Dharma jewel, the Dharma gem, if you find those also conducive, sometimes there'll be certain factors that don't make sense, or it's just like going to a buffet, or what's the other word, a smorgasbord. There might be certain things that you really like. Oh yeah, let's put a little of that in here, but that cheese, that smelly cheese from Holland or something, or maybe what was it? Remember President George Bush? He admitted at one point he hated broccoli, right? You remember that? I happen to like broccoli. Yeah. When you were a kid, is there anyone here who hated spinach? Couple? Those people who hated spinach, how do you feel about spinach now? Changed, right? So in the same way, the smorgasbord of the Dharma, there may be some things to our worldly palate that seem, like ritual or devotion or recitation or whatever, or too complicated, intellectual. At first, it's kind of like our spinach. We're kind of like children. We're just beginners. Don't discard that completely from your idea. Your smorgasbord plate, take what suits you, but still keep an eye on the spinach, thinking, well, maybe later, once my palate has matured, so to speak, I will find that facet of the Dharma not only tasty, but really healthy. Wow, I've been missing spinach all these years. You'll become like, who's the great guy? Popeye. You'll appreciate that spinach. So, two causes of refuge: a wisdom fear. When you really think about it, we have no real recourse. We don't know when we're going to die. We don't know what the future holds for us right now, whether we're going to die in a car accident this afternoon, whether we're going to choke on a deep fried Snickers bar at the state fair this evening. I hope not. I heard that they have that. Is that just an urban myth here? Is it? They do have deep fried Snickers bars. Okay. So there are many kinds of mundane kind of sufferings, but if you look at the future, we don't know what's coming after this life. What can protect us from the sufferings after this life? From a Christian perspective, there is a fear that was the monks and nuns at our Catholic school or the Jesuit school might have tried to instill in you, you're going to hell if you don't behave, We may have developed an antipathy toward that, a resistance toward that, and disbelief that they were just using this kind of fear to make us behave. But in some cases, maybe they were. But in reality, I believe all spiritual systems have to develop this sense of wisdom that sees the possibility of suffering in the future and provides some kind of solution, some refuge to that. So when we say, if we've developed that understanding of the Dharma by testing it over a period of time, say, yeah, this is working, this makes sense. I'm going to now put my leg into the tub. Now I'm going to lower my torso into this bath. I'm going to immerse myself into the Dharma and see if that continues to protect me. And as my mind becomes clearer, my experience will be more profound. Then your hope that the Dharma is your refuge will turn into a confidence, a sort of a faith that it does, and even a conviction. That's when your refuge becomes more strong. That's when you become a real Buddhist, you could say, depending on the Buddha Dharma. Or let's say you become a real Christian, depending on Christ's Dharma. Or you become a real person of the book, whether it be Jewish, Muslim, or Christian, depending on the Old Testament, let's say. This Dharma really protects me, the 10 Commandments or whatever. So when we say this formula, I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha, the real refuge, what really protects you from suffering, is the Dharma. We take refuge in the Buddha as a person for various reasons. One is the Buddha is the person who propounded these teachings, who explained these teachings that he experienced in his own life. The founder of Buddhism, the authority, like the doctor who prescribed the medicine of the Dharma. And we take refuge in the Sangha, the spiritual community, because without the aid of others who are treading the path together, treading the spiritual path together with us, it's very difficult to continue to practice authentically. You can go off in some kind of strange, deviant, your own mind trip. So we need the support of other spiritual practitioners. That in general is what we call the Sangha. Sangha is an Indian word, as is Buddha and Dharma. Sangha generally means community. So the community of like-minded practitioners, Buddhist practitioners, are called the Sangha. So we take refuge in them also. We spend time, rather than hanging out with your old college beer buddies or bowling friends whose minds are concerned about how to cheat on their taxes or how to cheat on their spouses or something like that, rather than communing with individuals rather than spending time with individuals who are bad influence on us, to spend time with our spiritual friends, the Sangha. That's how we take refuge. Doesn't mean that you give up all of your old friends. You say, excuse me, you're not Buddhist. I'm not hanging with you any longer. Not like that. But recognizing the influence of bad friends. There's a famous story that's mentioned in the Buddhist scriptures. Two buddies, when they were young. One of them was very studious and spiritual, good-hearted. The other one was a bit naughty. Okay, I like the Italian word for that, cattivo. It's very, very naughty. When they were young, they had this disposition. One of them, the virtuous one, went to the capital of Tibet called Lhasa. And in the back alleys, there were gambling dens and places to smoke opium and things like this. And he got in with a bad crowd, bad friends. The other one, who was naughty, migrated to a place a little north of Lhasa, the capital, called Reading, where there was a great community of spiritual people, the Kadampa Geshis. And over time, by his association with these virtuous friends, he changed his life, became a good person. They met some years later. Now the one who had been very virtuous earlier was now smoking and drug addicted and gambling and had debts and terrible stories of his relationships with women and so forth. The other one, who had been naughty before, by association with virtuous friends, had found a real purpose in life, become very calm and assured and so forth. So friend, this is just an example. You may see examples like that in your own life. Friendship, so the association with others. We take refuge with those that are treading the path together with us to help us take the medicine of the Dharma. So if within that state of mind of having these two causes, fear of suffering, which only dawns when you start to think about it. Yeah, there is many things. I can't control my own mind. I can't control my anger, can't control my addictions. Fear of suffering, of future lives, and so forth. And then at least a hope that the Dharma and the Buddha who taught it and the Sangha who practice it can protect us from that suffering. Later, turning into a faith and a conviction. Those are the causes of refuge, fear and faith. Okay. Then, within that state of mind, if you recite this formula or you attend a ceremony, a refuge ceremony, and in the presence of others, you affirm your taking of refuge, I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, and I take refuge in the Sangha. That's when you, in a sense, you could say you're a real Buddhist. Not just because you have on your North Carolina driver's license. Does it say what religion we are? I can't remember. No. Maybe that's against the North Carolina. What would? I think that would be not considered to be legally correct. That's interesting. Yeah. Maybe here in some countries it's considered, like in certain countries like Malaysia, you have to have your religion stated and things like that. So anyway, that's what I wanted to share with you this morning. Meaning of refuge. And perhaps in the future, although the prayers that we say at the beginning are there's some kind of esoteric mantras and something elevating the four immeasurable thoughts, maybe in the future there might be a very simple statement of this triple refuge, just because we're supposed to be a Buddhist center. That's the definition of being Buddhist. So let's end with a short meditation. We're almost out of time. But sit comfortably. Relax your body, relax your mind. See if you can revert back to the calm state that we tried to create at the beginning, the very first meditation. Just look at your mental consciousness. like one corner of your mind watching the rest of your mind. See the thoughts within it, images and motive states. And notice that those thoughts, in whatever form they might arise, are like clouds in the sky. They're not the very nature of the mind, the innermost nature. The mind is like a vast expanse of sky, unimpeding to thoughts. That the recognition of which shows us our potential. We can develop within our mind all the good qualities that we might admire. Wisdom, enthusiasm, but also love and compassion, patience, humility. We can get rid, if we have the right Dharma methods, meditation, we can get rid of our anger. We can get rid of our laziness, our low self-estimation of ourselves, our low self-esteem. We can eliminate from this spaciousness of our mind jealousy and pride, nagging, mental states that cause us grief, fear, unintelligent fear. In this quiet state of mind, think whatever imprints I've left today in my consciousness, whatever memories you could say I have, whatever imprints it's left in me, may they become the cause of my continued spiritual growth. Day by day, week by week, year by year, life by life. Due to these actions that I've done this morning, listening, thinking, contemplating, may it become the cause of my becoming a real, authentic human being, so that I not only do not harm others, I actually can benefit them. Due to these, you could say, merits that we've created this morning, may I become enlightened, an enlightened being for the sake of all living beings. In Buddhism, this is what's called dedicating the virtuous energy, dedicating the merits, making a firm determination that they, in whatever way they ripen in the future, as Christ said, ye reap what ye sow. In whatever way they ripen, may they become the cause of my continued spiritual development for the welfare of all. So thank you very much. Have a good morning. It looks like it's going to be a great day. Let's watch out for the deep fried stuff at the state fair.
This time you're welcome to offer a kata to Venerable George. If you are not planning to go to any of his other classes, this is his last week for this visit.
Oh, I see. It surprised me. Okay. This is a Tibetan tradition. You don't have to do if you don't want. Well, in Tibet, they had their various traditions. Some of them were grafted from China, that they would say this scarf is called a kata. So they, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. And so these people are just, thank you. Thanks for coming.
Anyone's welcome to come just as a way of saying thank you.
Don't worry if you think this is silly. Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful email that I received today that I would love to share with you. It's from
I've got a wonderful microphone.
Thank you, Venerable. Thank you.
Thanks. A wonderfully loud voice.
Thank you.
So
Thank
I'm
you
Sherry
very much.
Satoris.
What's your name?
Yeah, I'm Sherry Satoris, and I
Mike. Nice to meet you.
am the
Thank you.
coordinator of the monk sponsorship program here at Churinoff Center.
Thank you.
I received an email today from Geshe Sampo, who is Geshe attendant, from his brother Tiga. And I'll read it to you and then I'll explain a little bit. So Tiga says, "Today I would like to share my happiest moment with you all. It's been tough and tense in the last couple of months due to my last exam. Anyway, today results are being announced and I got the highest mark ever in my 6th big exam. I am the 3rd ranking among almost 100 participants from all over the Galupa monasteries. That is something unimaginable which happened to me. Therefore, I would like to share this great moment with you, as your dedication is very much involved in this success. Thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. Your kind-hearted and solidarity throughout my life is most valuable. Thank you once again, Tiga Lama." So Tiga is receiving his La Rampa degree, which is an amazing feat. Venerable George, if I'm saying anything out of line, please. He has studied for more than 20 years. This is the same degree that His Holiness holds. It's the highest level of education in the Galupa tradition. We are fortunate Geshe Gelik also holds this degree. And so it's an amazing feat. He received enough education to receive his Geshe degree, and then for 6 additional years, they take exams. And so he has passed, and I am going in November to celebrate with him and be at his Geshe ceremony. And I just thought if anyone would like to send a note or a card or an offering, I'd be happy to deliver it for you. So this is a wonderful success for the monk sponsorship program. And if you have need any information about that, please see me. Thank you for your time.